What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the On Purpose podcast, where it's our privilege to show up with you each and every week and bring you stories and thoughts that inspire you, maybe get you moving again. Sometimes they're just going to remind you of what you said you wanted to do, or remind you of that little bit of dream that's inside you that maybe we haven't brought to the surface yet. So I want to thank you for being here and allowing us this place in your life. So this week I am excited to sit down with Dr. Daniel Chapelle, a psychologist and author who has spent years exploring how to make peace with life's sources of unhappiness. And I'm really intrigued to talk to him about his curiosity and desire to find a place where psychology and philosophy intersect and can provide us with a powerful approach to life. So if I mean, that's one of the things I'm really like, what is going on here? If we can combine our modern psychology and the scientific studies with the philosophical, traditional, maybe Eastern meditative sciences and stuff that we've progressed, there's probably a sweet spot for us in there. And that's what I'm excited to sit down and talk with him about. And I ask this, if you give any value from this episode or any of the other 274 previous episodes, please consider helping us out by liking, subscribing, giving us a rating on Spotify and YouTube, so that in a world of algorithms and metrics, we are more easily found by the people that are looking to join a community just like ours. Um, that's our ask for the week. I hope you enjoy this week's interview with Dr. Dan Chapelle. Dr. Dan Chapelle, welcome, sir, to the On Purpose podcast. How are you today?
Pretty good. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm excited to have you. It was great to get an email from you guys about wanting to come on the show. And I started doing research and I was like, man, this is a good story to share. And I really like kind of the combination of psychology and spiritualness coming together in today's world.
Okay. Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
That's
So
that's
give us
where
a,
that's where I live. Yeah.
I love it. Give us a little bit about your background, sir.
Yeah. I'm a psychologist by trade and training with over 30 years of experience. I also wrote 7 books about the interface between modern psychology and philosophy, mostly ancient philosophy. And that's what my books are about. They're spelled out and described a little bit on my website, which is meditativeselfcare.com. Meditativeselfcare.com. That there is a listing of the 7 books and a little bit of description of it. And so here I am.
Yeah. And you've been doing this for a while. This isn't something new that you just started getting into.
No, not at all. I've been at this for a while. I did get a doctorate in psychology, but actually I started this as a personal kind of quest. Much before that, I discovered a book on psychoanalysis when I was 13 years old, and that's essentially when things started for me. I confess, when I was 13, I didn't understand much of what I was reading in that book, but I've kept on reading things, good, important things. And that has become the story of my life, essentially. It's a story about reading, about things that I don't know and don't understand, to the point where I feel like I can say I understand something about it. And so that's also how my writing developed.
I love it. I think that's such a good balance of challenging your thoughts by seeking out stuff you don't understand or maybe you don't even know about versus just forming an opinion
Exactly.
based on what somebody
Yeah,
told you.
right. Exactly. In the last number of years, I ended up studying, of all things, ancient Chinese philosophy. I would have never thought in my whole life that I would end up there. And it's the same with my study and my discovery and study of Buddhism. I would have never thought that I would end up being a meditator, studying and writing about Buddhism. So it is an adventure, that's for sure, but it's the best adventure I could possibly imagine.
I love it. All right, before we get into too much of that, Dr. Chapelle, I need to warm you up a little bit. We like to have like a little mental warm up before we get into the big stuff. Are you ready for your warm up questions today?
Of course, yes.
All right, here we go. First warm up question: sun rises or sun sets?
Sun rises and
Why?
sets.
Yeah, which one do you pick? You want them
I'll
both?
take sunrise. I'll take sunrise. Are these trick questions or what?
No, no trick
What?
questions. No trick questions, my friend. Why would you pick a sunrise?
Well, it's the beginning of something, the beginning of a new day. It's where we get to do things, and we wake up to the world, and we think it's always the same world, but it really isn't. It's always a new world, and if you can keep that attitude, oh, it's always a new world, then it is a new world, which it is. The world is constantly being created. The world is not a static thing, some like a big ball in space. It is forever changing, forever evolving. No two moments are ever the same. So from one moment to the next, we are entering new territory.
I love it. That's a great explanation. All right, what's a song that you hear that gets you singing?
A what? A song that gets me singing?
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm not a big singer, so I have to think here a little bit. You know. Um, uh, okay, I'll give you one. That I love. Which is a Louis Armstrong song. It's a wonderful world. Which is it's a wonderful world, but it takes a woman or a girl. To make it wonderful.
Oh, that's a great song too. What would you say is
I
probably your
can give you another one.
that's
That's
great.
really
What's another
important
one?
to me. Another one is from a singer who was popular in the 1970s, Melanie. I don't know how old you are, so I don't know if you know her. But she had a song which is its main line functions importantly in my writing, in fact. It says, the song is titled, "What Have They Done to My Song, Ma?" And there is a line in it that goes, I wish I could find a good book to live in. I wish I could find a good book to live in. And that's exactly what we all want. That is the most fundamental human desire, to find a good book to live in.
Yeah, that's a good one. I have to look that up. I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, you're
Well,
probably on the young side for that.
I don't know. I think we're all young, right? We're younger today than we will be
There you
tomorrow.
go. There you go. I like what Nietzsche said about Emerson. He has no idea how old he is. And I think that's a wonderful, wonderful thing to be, like you just have no idea how old you are.
Right.
And not necessarily to act the way your chronological age tells you should act.
Mm, that's awesome. What's a favorite book of yours?
Favorite book, Das Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche, his masterpiece. It's yes, my favorite book. It's not because it's a fun thing to read. It's like really hard work to read it. It takes actually years to begin to understand it, but it's my favorite book. And it's yeah, all my writings, my 7 books, they're all related to each other. The titles are different, of course, but the topic is related, or the topics are related, and they all have to do with Nietzsche's teaching of what he called the eternal return. It's a philosophy of his, and that is taught by Zarathustra, the main figure of the book, Zarathustra. Long answer for a short question.
That's great. All right, you get to have dinner with one person. They could have passed on already or still be alive. Who would you have dinner with, and what would you want to ask them?
That would be, could I have two? One would be Nietzsche, and the other one would be the Buddha.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Would you have dinner together, or you want them separate?
Together would be fine. Actually, would be superb.
That'd be a good dinner table, right?
It certainly would be. Like, uh, uh, yeah.
What would you want to ask?
Well, I would want to point out to both of them of course, the Buddha didn't know about Nietzsche, who came 2,500 years after him. Nietzsche understood some parts of the Buddha, but I think he misunderstood much of it, and in a significant way. I have written a book which is called Nietzsche and the Buddha, which spells out um, similarities, a very significant amount of very important similarities between Nietzsche's teachings and the Buddha's teachings. And that's what I would like to talk with them about, see what they think about that. Uh,
Yeah, that'd be fantastic to get comparable ideas. What would you say here's your last warm-up question. What's a memorable quote or saying that kind of has stuck with you and kind of guide you through your days?
oh, there are lots of those, but I can give you one that comes to mind, and that is really sort of central. Is again, it's a line from Nietzsche that says, "We love life not because we are." Wait a minute. We love life not because we are living, but okay, we love life not because we love life, but because we are used to loving. Oh, yeah. Okay, here it is. We love life not because we are used to living, but because we are used to loving. That's a very different perspective from the usual Darwinian concern about we just need to survive and do whatever it is we need to do to survive. The real thing is to find something to love in this world, and
Mm.
something that makes you love the whole world. So that's why we love life, not because we are used to living, but because we are used to loving. So
That's
that's
a
it.
Yeah, that's a great quote. What do you what would you say if we made that kind of our statement every morning, right? If we woke up and we said that to ourselves and we kind of used that to guide our days, what would you envision
Oh, I
happening to
think
our world?
eventually, I think that would make a significant difference, because usually we wake up in the morning with a Darwinian frame of mind. We have a role and a job, and we want to succeed in that role and that job, and we want to keep our jobs and keep the house and keep the wife and kids and keep the car. That's Darwinism. That's surviving. That's loving life because we're used to living. But if you thought about uh, we love life because we are used to loving, then that opens you up to thinking about things that are love worthy, and that you would be willing to do all kinds of things for, precisely because it is love worthy. So I think it would make a big difference over time, sort of as a mantra kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think there'd be a lot of good byproducts, right? Like if you were looking,
Eventually, yeah, absolutely. It trickles into your system, into your cells,
hmm
and your cells become used to the sound of it, so to speak. And it would change you as you are. You know.
Yeah, and it would, I think, like you said, a ripple effect, it would change the people that are around you too, right? If that becomes an
Right.
expectation.
Absolutely. And if you change, then the people around you will change in response to you.
Yeah.
Uh, so the best way to change people is to change yourself, really.
That's the only way to get lasting change, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the downfalls sometimes in today's world is we want everything to change around us, but we want to stay the
Oh,
same.
yeah, yeah. The Buddhists have a lovely story about that. They say if you want to be happy, if you don't want to get hurt as you walk through the world, you have two options. Either you can cover the whole world with soft leather, or you can make yourself a pair of leather shoes. And that's the difference. How you go through the world instead of having the world sort of covered to suit your needs.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. All right, Dr. Chappelle, are you feeling warmed up? You good with my warm-up questions today?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is good, and actually, I love your questions. I think this is cool.
Ah, thanks. Yeah, we love doing this. So here's my first question I want to talk to you about is when was there a time in your life where you realized you were just more curious than maybe a lot of the people around you and seeking knowledge and stuff you didn't understand? Has this been since you were like a little person, or is this a recent development?
No, this is what I meant when I suggested when I said that I discovered a book on psychoanalysis when I was 13 years old, and I didn't understand much of it. But instead of sort of putting it aside, I kept reading about more and more stuff I didn't know, or didn't even know existed, or didn't understand. So, oh, absolutely, I have a long history of being a persistent sort of questioner. I did, a lot of people in that age range, they start asking very important questions, like, why are we here? What's the point of existence and whatever. Well, many people give up on that eventually because they get confused or irritated or frustrated, or they can't come up with any decent answer. So they just, become a pharmacist or whatever it is they become, and live sort of more or less happily ever after. I have never given up on these big questions. I've always looked them squarely in the face, and that's been my style, and that's been the story of my life and of my reading and writing, and that's why I write the books that I do write, uh, which not everyone would write. Um,
Right. What was that like as a 13-year-old reading a psychoanalysis book? Because there's not many 13-year-olds probably hanging out with you that are reading the same books.
exactly. Actually, I had one friend, also a 13-year-old in the same class, and we were reading books by Freud, by Jung, and by Adler, Alfred Adler,
Uh-huh.
and and he eventually gave up on it and did become a pharmacist. He's a fine, guy, nothing wrong with that. But he eventually sort of gave up on that because a lot of people think philosophy is so useless, or they can't believe that they would ever be able to do anything with it or benefit from it. So most people give up. I'm too stubborn to give up. Um,
I love it. That's great. Yeah, and that curiosity just continued to permeate throughout your life.
Absolutely, and it continues today. And it got me through incredible areas of study that I would, first of all, never have known were there to study, and secondly, wouldn't know how to find my way around in them. And I've over time learned to find my way around in these various different places. It's almost like getting to find your way around in a big city like Paris. First time you go, you have no idea where you are or where anything is. But if you keep going and keep visiting, you get to orient yourself and you get to find out what's where and how to get there. So it is with reading. The people I've read, I consider myself blessed to have been able to read these people. Um,
Yeah, that's
so
good.
that's
I
it.
I, I love that. And what do you think, Dr. Chappelle, if we combine two things? What about we combined your quote that we live life not because we are used to living, but because we're used to loving. So we go about our days looking at it through that lens. And then we also add to it that we also want to be curious today. We're going to be curious about the people we meet, the things we get to see, the stuff we learn. How can you imagine just how much open people would be to each other if we lived looking through love and desiring to be curious every day?
Oh, absolutely. It would make a tremendous difference. It sort of breaks my heart that not more people are more curious and more willing to sort of sit down and say, well, I haven't thought about this. Let's just talk about this. You don't have to know something before you can talk about it. You just have to look at it and look close, and then look closer and closer. That's what Emerson said. He never wrote about other people's writings. He never quoted people. He said, he only wrote about what interested him personally, and he pursued that interest doggedly. And he said, and that's how you write good stuff, because what matters to one person really is of interest to everybody. What the things that matter to me, I pursue them not because of me, personally or only, but because I know I have this great faith that if it's of interest to me, it is important and of interest to everybody.
Mm.
And that's the faith. That's the kind of faith that I have.
Yeah, I love that. What inspired you to write meditative self-care, and how did you decide to bridge the gap between like a clinical psychology, more traditional psychology, and the meditative, more Eastern philosophies?
Yeah, actually, from the beginning, I was interested in the other part as well. I was never interested in just psychology, just modern psychology, or just behavioral psychology. I was always interested in the larger philosophic basis of things. So from the beginning, it has always been like that for me. So my degree in psychology is from a place called um, the the Institute for Philosophic Studies of the University of Dallas. So from the beginning, I looked for places where there was a broader interest and where you could import things that are not necessarily official psychology. So my approach in terms of the formal studies that I've done has always been interdisciplinary, or if you want, multidisciplinary, not just one thing,
Yeah,
not
now
just
that
psychology.
kind of goes back to you still remaining curious, right? Even though you're in a program, you're
Yeah,
looking for a way, how do I combine the best of both worlds, right? And I think that's a great place for us to be, because there is some obviously great benefits to modern medicine, modern psychology, the stuff we've learned, but there's
absolutely,
also
absolutely.
tremendous benefits in understanding where we've come from
Yeah,
and how we bridge the gap between the two.
yeah. Absolutely. You can't do just one, I think. You know, if you do just psychology, you really impoverish yourself, I think. You know, you limit yourself. If you just do sort of abstract philosophic stuff, you may lose touch with the ground on which you stand, you know? So you have to do both. I was, you know, I spent, as I said, over 30 years doing clinical work, which meant on a daily basis, I was meeting with people who struggled with their individual, their unique struggles. And that's where life happens, you know. That's where I like to work, get my hands dirty with that sort of stuff, you know, instead of just doing academically based philosophy, you know, all in the
Right.
head, you know.
Yep.
Uh,
What was one
yeah,
of your first, do you remember like a first success you had where you're like, wait a second, I'm on to something here. Let me go further into this, or a moment
yeah.
where it kind of struck you?
Boy, I have to say, you ask very good questions. You know, yeah, not really. And actually, it helps me too. It helps me look at what I've done. What the first, you know, as I said, I started when I was 13, and I've been studying all kinds of things ever since. I got, I gained my focus in when I was in graduate school. I was in a multidisciplinary seminar on 19th century German thought. That clings heavy, but it sounds heavy, but it really isn't that bad,
Right.
you know. But anyway, that's where I discovered Nietzsche. You know, I had been reading about him. If you read a lot, you come across this name Nietzsche a lot. But I had no understanding, nor did I know anybody who did or who could help me understand it. So I decided this is my chance. 19th century German thought, that is Nietzsche territory. So I began to study him, and I quickly came to his central thought, which is the thought of the eternal return of all things. We can go into that if you like a little bit.
Sure.
And that's when I sort of chewed down and, you know, like a dog biting on a bone and never letting go. That's what I did. You know, I started with Nietzsche, and I became a little bit of a Nietzsche scholar over time, over the years. And I wrote my dissertation about it, and wrote a book about it, and then wrote a book about Nietzsche and the Buddha. And you know, Nietzsche is always there. He's sort of my constant companion, if you like. Nietzsche and the Buddha are my constant companions. And that's how I gained my focus. This Nietzschean thought of the eternal return is one of the most challenging thoughts in the history of Western philosophy. And I decided then and there in graduate school that, oh, this this is really a challenge, and this is I'm going to focus on this, and I have been focusing on it ever since. On my 7 books, they're all related. They're all attempts to sort of look at the same issue from different angles and different ways. It's always the same thing, one thought.
Hmm.
Um,
What does that mean to you? What have you taken away from the eternal return of all things?
well, first of all, that is a challenge. Like if I told you, Jerrod, you're going to have to live your life over and over again, exactly the same as before, and there's nothing new in it, and etc. The question arises: how would you feel, and what would you think about that? If you were an unhappy camper, you'd say, "This is the most awful idea. This is pure hell."
Right.
On the other hand, if you're like a really happy, creative person, you might say, "Oh, I love it. This is the best thing I could possibly think of." Um, but so it's certainly a personal challenge. Like people who are raised with hopes of an otherworldly afterlife where they're going to find consolation for a difficult life in this world, they would be horrified at that thought because it takes away from them this idea of being redeemed from this difficult world to live in a heavenly life. So the task becomes, how do you become so well disposed to your life and to the world that you would say, "Oh, I love this. This is great. I can do this." So that's been the challenge, and it's a challenge that has taken me, sort of forever, like decades, and it has led me into, Buddhism. It has led me into eventually also ancient Chinese philosophy, Confucius, and some of the other less well-known people.
So
Because yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, you're doing great. I was going to ask on that saying there, that eternal return of all things. Do you do you propose that like we keep that as a conscious thought to like how we're gonna live our day, like thinking, okay, if I'm gonna live the same life over and over, I want to make today a day I'd want to live again?
Yeah, something along those lines. It is, once you get the idea of, whoa, this is serious business, then you also have to begin to say, whoops, my life is serious business. I better take it seriously. And then you begin, then you're back at that, age 13 or wherever, when you start asking big questions about life. But this time you have a specific challenge, and it gives you guidance without giving answers. Nietzsche does not give people easy answers to questions. He lets them work it out for themselves, In that respect, he's sort of very similar to the Buddha as well. Uh, um, so everybody would have to look at their own life and say, "This is my life. Here I am in this place, in this circumstance, at this time. What am I going to do with this?" You can't sort of start looking for at the neighbor and say, "Well, he's got a BMW. I need a BMW too."
Mm.
Uh, no, you only got yourself. You got your little plot in the world, and go at it.
Yeah.
It, it's an enormous challenge because it's for one thing, an only challenge. Nobody can tell you how to do this, but eventually, if you keep with that, like how am I supposed to live so that I can be content with my life? If you keep that in the forefront of your mind, you'll get somewhere. And the way one person gets somewhere is very different from the way I got somewhere, but they will get somewhere, and they will encounter very important thoughts and people, and it will be effort worth spending.
Let me ask you
It's
something.
better.
You said something interesting there, Dr. Chapelle. You said it could be like I can't forget how you said it, but maybe an enormous task or a big challenge to live every day like it's going to be the same day, like you're going to live this way forever. But
Yeah.
is it really that big of a challenge if I woke up and I had that thought that like, okay, if I have to live this day forever, I'm going to do all the things, treat people the way I would want to treat them forever, the way I would want to treat myself forever. Would it be that hard?
Well, let me let me turn the question around. Do you think it would be easy?
No, I think it would be harder than living life on autopilot, right? For sure,
That's for sure.
where I just get up and go with whatever is going on and I have no direction for my days. But I
Okay.
also think that it would be easier in some ways because I would be taking ownership of my day and I would be probably finding the joy in all the stuff I get to do, which
There you
ultimately,
go. Exactly. You would become the owner of all these things. That's correct. But you would also become the owner of all the unhappiness that comes your way. You know, like if I catch you on a good day with this question, you might say, okay, good, wonderful, I like it. On the other hand, if I catch you on a day of great loss, you know, some tragic loss in your life, or some terrible illness just struck you, or one of your somebody
right,
in your family, how easy do you think it is then? You know, not so easy anymore, right?
right. It's not so easy, but I do think that's a great point that sometimes we're missing in today's society is that yes, you may catch me on a day that I'm not feeling good. So now, but
Yeah.
because I have a purpose to live this day to the best I can be,
Okay.
maybe I see, okay, I'm not feeling good today, but that makes me appreciate how good I felt yesterday, right? It makes me appreciate my
Okay.
health when I don't have it. If I'm on a day of
Yes.
loss,
Yeah. I'm reminded now. Yeah, I'm reminded now. Your podcast is called On Purpose, right?
yeah. So I really
I
challenge,
did.
like, that's what I want to do is like, I want to know that, like, the days I'm sad, it's okay to be sad, but because of that sadness, it also makes me appreciate the days I'm happier, right? Or the
Right.
days I have a loss makes me appreciate all the moments I had up till that loss. And that's,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think sometimes in today's world where we just, like you said earlier, we see our neighbors with the BMWs, we see everybody's posting all the success they're supposedly having. It's hard for us to remember that we're not always supposed to have the best moments because
And you
sometimes
don't need them.
those
Yeah. Right.
make us
Right.
appreciate.
Right. 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 No, that's true. Absolutely. So I think you got the idea of the challenge. And I think you're probably primed for that because of your interest in purpose, of living a life of purpose, which
Yeah.
is, you know, what's his name again? Thoreau, Henry David Thoreau, who said the mass of men live lives of quiet desperation. You know,
Mm.
if all you do is go to work to pay off your brand new BMW, you'll be happy with your BMW for a couple of weeks, and then it goes its old hat, and you become bored. But you still have to pay off the car. So that's a life of quiet desperation. Whereas if you have a real challenge, then you don't mind. It's a very Nietzschean thought. I think he came up with it by yourself. The difference between pleasant and unpleasant sort of falls away because what remains is your purpose.
Mm. So how would you say people can start bringing into a meditative adopt a meditative self-care program for themselves? How do people bring that into their day-to-day lives?
Well, I'm a big fan of meditation, and so that's my practically speaking, my focus is on teaching meditation and promoting meditation. You know, my book on meditative self care is the best description that I could think of for anyone to get into it. Meditative self care. It's one of the 7 books that is described on the website, meditativeselfcare.com, and it's available on Amazon.com, where all my books are available. I would say start with meditation. Learn meditation. What is meditation? Meditation is mind training. Training to do what? Um, if you just the Buddhists say we have our mind is like it's like a hyperactive monkey. You know, it jumps from one thing to another. You know, from one branch to another, et cetera, et cetera. And if you don't believe that, just try a little meditation. What meditation would that be? Just sit down and focus your attention only on the physical sensations of your breathing and just sitting and breathing. Focus your attention on the physical sensations. that sounds like incredibly easy. Actually, it turns out to be quite a challenge because you
Sure.
do that, you'll start seeing if you're somewhat familiar with it, you'll see your mind jumps all over the place. You have crazy monkey mind. And the problem for us is that we suffer from who we think we are, and we're always running after our thoughts, and in an undisciplined fashion. And so what happens is we sit down, try to meditate, some thought appears, and we chase after it. It's sort of like when you throw a stick in front of a dog, the dog chases after the stick. We're constantly chasing after sticks in our mind. And so what happens is we are like monkeys. If you want to catch a monkey, you use a monkey trap, and that's very simple. It's a coconut or a gourd or something with a little hole in it and some food inside. The monkey sticks his little hand in it, grabs the food, and then because his fist is now bigger, he can't pull it out. And
Yep.
that's what we do with our thoughts. We hang on to our thought like, I'm not worth loving. Nobody's going to care for me. I'll never find a good job. Whatever the thought is that shapes your mood, what you're doing is with your little monkey fist, you grab the thought and you close your fist around it, and now you can't pull it out. So
Yep.
like the monkey, you become your own. You become a prisoner, and you become your own prison guard. And in order to free yourself from these negative thoughts about yourself or your life or whatever, you have to let go. You have to sort of let go, and so you can pull your hand back. So meditation is about training our monkey mind to let go of the thoughts that we are chasing all the time.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good analogy there. Yeah, I love that. What would you say? Because so a lot of our community, maybe struggling balancing like their professional responsibilities with personal self-care, and you hear a lot, people just they don't have time to take care of themselves because they're so busy giving for others, whether it's work, family, siblings, spouses.
Yeah.
How would you encourage people to balance all those responsibilities with first taking care of themselves?
Yeah, well, I understand that. It's, which that also is a sort of a monkey trap thought, like we believe in it and we won't let anybody talk ourselves out of it. But, anybody can sit down for 10 minutes just on the bench in the backyard or, it's a meadow or in some city, in a park or something. Just sit down and do nothing. Just watch what's going on uh, without trying to do anything, without trying to achieve anything. And then sort of begin to focus on your breath, the physical sensation of breathing and sitting, just sitting and breathing. And that's the introduction. That's the first step to meditation. Anybody can find 5 or 10 or 15 minutes to do that, You don't have to sort of go buy yourself a meditation cushion and all kinds of, paraphernalia, Buddhist
Right.
paraphernalia, and hang them around your neck or your wrist or whatever. You can just sit wherever you are right now. Sit and do nothing. 5 minutes.
Yeah,
And that's
that's
how you do.
what would you I was trying to phrase this question right. Sitting and doing nothing is so hard for people in today's world, right? Because we're literally inundated with stuff nonstop.
And plus, we're driven by this notion of ourselves as I am somebody who has important things to do, and I better do them. You know, Uh, and sort of that's already how you make yourself miserable. Like, think you can't take 5 minutes off from yourself. It, meditation is really a question of taking a break from yourself, not for that same personal self, but of that self. Take a break of that self from that self that's always busy. So it's the hardest thing to do is doing nothing,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that has to be. It's a skill. It's a practice. And if you study meditation, you learn how to do that. Again, I don't want to stress it too much, but my little book on meditative self-care is a very readable book and very simple, but nothing simplistic about it. It sort of combines simple, practical teachings and exercises with the most profound thoughts from a long history of philosophy and stuff like that. So anybody can read it. It's I wrote it for the specific purpose of introducing people to it and with an understanding of why. Because a lot of people think I'm going to meditate, but if you ask them why, they may not be clear about just why
Mm.
or about their expectations. And so it's very important to understand what you can expect from it
Yeah,
if
what
you
would you
meditate.
say for a community member that's listening today that's just beginning on a meditative journey? What what can they expect from themselves? What would you say are some expectations they should set for themselves?
Well, it's okay. Both Nietzsche and the Buddha started with one premise. They didn't interest. They were not interested in metaphysics and gods and and all these things that we cannot know. They were realistic and they said life is difficult uh, constantly. Either it's just your nose itching and you need to scratch it, or it's the country's at war and everything in between. There's nothing easy about life, and whoever says otherwise is really quite foolish. Um, so their starting premise is life is difficult, and the Buddha, his premise is you don't have to be unhappy anymore. We all have reasons why we're unhappy: our wife, our job, or this and that, and whatever. He says, he teaches, you don't have to be unhappy anymore. So what you can expect is a practice and a teaching that eventually, slowly over time, begins to teach you to understand why you're unhappy and then to do something about that. The reason why we're unhappy, we already touched on that a little bit, is because we have this idea of who we are, who we think we are. It's just super important, and the world better realize that and act accordingly, and and so on. And of course, that doesn't happen. So we're always thinking we're somebody or other, and not just as I'm a mechanic or I am a teacher or I'm a spouse and a parent or whatever. It's much more subtle things like I'm the guy who always gets angry, or I'm the guy, I'm a sort of a whiny, kind of a guy, or I react like a little girl, when somebody takes away their teddy bear.
Yeah.
So these are the more subtle things that we're thinking about ourselves, and that make us react to the situations we encounter. We're always reacting to situations we encounter, and if you feel any kind of discomfort, whether it's slight irritability like a scratchy nose or really insulted or deeply hurt or something like that, you always have to ask, well, who is it here who's being unhappy? And what are they unhappy about? And then you begin to see how you think about yourself. And you begin to get in a position where you can say, is this really true? Am I really that unlovable all the time? And then you begin to sort of, first of all, discover those thoughts. Secondly, discover that you're clinging to them like a monkey to the food in its trap. Third, that you're clinging so hard that you can't pull your fist out of the trap.
Mhm.
And so then you begin to see that how can I let go of that thought? And the whole meditation practice and theory is about letting go of those thoughts that are unhelpful and that contribute to your unhappiness, whatever it may be.
Yeah,
Because all unhappiness is self-made.
yeah, it's amazing how long people will hold on to something and tell that same story. For some people, it's their whole life, right?
Yeah, that's the eternal return of the same thing. And repeat it over and over in their life.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they just can't
So
let go. And I think that's one of the joys I get from meditation and working on that is It's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to not be your best all the time, but it's a
Yeah,
fantastic feeling to release it, right? And realize that, okay, I don't have to continue to carry this forward.
right, right, right. Yeah. So letting go is a wonderful thing, you know. Uh, so meditation teaches you to sit in a place that eventually becomes more comfortable, becomes more silent, you know, with less and less of your mind racing all over the place. Uh, Sometimes it's harder,
Mhm.
sometimes it's easier. Not every meditation session is alike, and more meditation sessions are difficult rather than easy because we impose our expectations on them. You know,
Mm.
if you
Yeah,
just stick with, if you just stick with this focus of how things are right now, the breath, or just feeling the sensation of sitting,
right.
you can do that. You, you're gonna be
Yeah,
lovely.
just being for a little
Yeah,
bit.
right, right, right.
What legacy do you hope to leave with your work?
I hope to contribute to the realization that meditation is not just a Buddhist kind of thing or an Asian kind of thing, but that there's something in Western philosophy that is that can become the equivalent to some of that. One way to put it is to say that I think, and here again, Nietzsche is a leading man. There is such a thing as the possibility of a Western Buddhism for Western people, by Western people, and about Western people. In other words, we don't need to sort of imitate the Buddha and Buddhists and join sects and stuff like that, but to realize that our Western philosophy is gradually pointing in the direction of discovering its own kind of Buddhism. That would be, if I could contribute to that, that would be great. And then generally, for people to begin to learn more about meditation and experience it as a kind of a good thing. Uh,
If you had your way and you could just make this happen today, what would an ideal Western philosophy that combines this look like to you?
uh, yeah, that would be several hours all by itself. But it would be, let's go back to the first question. Um, we would discover that we exist not for the purpose of surviving, a
Mm.
la Darwin, but for the purpose of discovering that this is a lovable world. We are to discover that we are incomprehensible beings in an incomprehensible but lovable world. That I think would be a good realization. You know,
No, that's fantastic. Yeah, say that again for me so I get it right.
what's that?
Yeah, repeat that last thing you said so I make sure I get it right. We exist
Oh, okay.
not for just
Yeah,
surviving.
no, we exist not just for the purpose of surviving, but for the purpose of discovering that we love existing in this world, and that we love being who we are. That doesn't mean we're perfect beings, and that doesn't even matter. But the ultimate goal is to realize, I think, we are incomprehensible but lovable beings in an incomprehensible but lovable world.
Mm.
That's not a bad realization to make.
No, that'd be a pretty good way to live your days.
Yeah, I'll cheer you up. If you can think that every morning, good.
Right. No, and that's why I just challenge, like, why can't we? Why can't we take ownership of how we're gonna feel about our days, how we're gonna think about ourselves? And I think
Yeah,
we're moving in that direction. I think we are. I gotta
yeah,
believe that as goofy as the world is at times, that there's so many people like us that are like, no, wait a second, I'm gonna just own my little piece of the world, and I can't change everything around the world, but I'm also not gonna sit back and not work on myself because of other circumstances, right? And if I change myself and I work to make myself a better being,
yeah. And then people around you will benefit.
Right. And if we all
Yeah,
do that, if we all take our small pieces and work,
right.
now we have great
Yeah,
impact.
we're headed in the right direction. And the book that I'm currently working on, trying to work on, is the idea of the evolution of consciousness.
Mm.
That we are moving in the direction of such a consciousness as we have been talking about. It's not for everyone. It's going to take a bunch of people to lead the way. It will have to become more popular, made more popular, and it is, being made more popular. Like figures like Eckhart Tolle, if you're familiar, and others, um, who are making headway. I think we're pointed in the right direction, and we're in for a change of consciousness, a consciousness that is more focused on loving life and loving being alive than on just surviving in comfort. Nietzsche talks about, sort of derisively, about the religion of comfortableness. Like a BMW is better than a little Toyota Corolla, more comfortable. Yeah, okay, fine. Um, but if we make that into a religion, we're doomed. If we
Yeah.
if we can't sit any higher. So
Yeah. Uh,
anyway.
I love it. Dr. Chapelle, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure to sit and talk with you, and it's an honor to share your story with our community. Where can I send our followers? Where can they go to be more part of what you're developing?
Okay, again, the first of all, again, thank you for having me and for showing interest in this material. And I can tell that you know your way around in this kind of material and in the experience of exploring it. Places for people to go are the website meditativeselfcare.com, which lists all 7 of my books, and they can all be had in Amazon. And then the book that I would primarily recommend as a starter book is the book Meditative Self Care. I am in the practice of putting on the website an audio version of this book, which would be free for people, and I think would be helpful. But so those two things, meditativeselfcare.com as a website, and the book Meditative Self Care. Those would be great places to start. And people can contact me on my website if they like. So, and
Awesome.
I will certainly answer. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. It's been a pleasure again.
Okay, Jerrod, you have yourself a wonderful day. Okay.